Hello everybody and welcome to the first episode of our brand new show, Two Sides, with Mike and Ryan. I'm Mike.
And I'm Ryan. And pretty much we named it Two Sides because we believe that there are two sides to every situation. And for the situations we want to talk about most is movies, games, entertainment district, pretty much everything that's in the arts because we are two film students.
Yeah, and in lieu of that, we not only do we believe that there are two sides to a film in the presentation and the behind the scenes, but there's many different aspects that go into the making of a film, as we've been learning. So, what we've prepared is a couple of our favorite films and some very interesting facts about them.
The Wizard of Oz. It's directed by Victor Fleming and starring I can't say names.
Just
sucks.
Keep going.
Starring Judy Garland. Many of the Wicked Witch scenes, though, in this were pretty much cut because they thought that Margaret Hamilton's performance in them was actually too scary for audiences. Now, at the time, no one would think, oh, the Wicked Witch is actually that scary, because through age of film, things start to become more or less overacting or over dramatic, because every single I think it's 10 years the acting styles change.
Well, I don't know about you, but I was scared of the Wicked Witch. I had a nightmare that the Wicked Witch came out through my wall. My dad poured water on the wall, and I never had a Wizard of Oz related dream ever again. Next on the list is, I don't actually know where these rank on my top favorites, but the first film that I would like to discuss is one that you may have heard of before. It's this little film called Return of the Jedi. It was directed by Richard Marquand and starring Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, among others. This is a fact that I thought I'd start off with a fact that you guys probably already knew. It was originally called Revenge of the Jedi, but it was changed because Jedi aren't typically... George Lucas didn't want to portray Jedi as feeling vengeful.
Next, a lot of people kind of think that this film, why would it be in my top 5? Well, for me it's a guilty pleasure, and it's Real Steel, directed by Sean Levy, starring Hugh Jackman. In this, I believe Hugh Jackman was amazing.
I don't think it's a guilty pleasure. I think it's just a pleasure to have watched that film. I think it was a good film.
It's a really good film.
Hope
I love it.
You all agree.
Because who doesn't love robots punching the crap out of each other?
And not directed by Michael Bay.
Pretty much. Because if it was directed by Michael Bay, one of them would have exploded. Now! But the fun fact that we found is, in apparent nod to Rocky, Rocky made 1976, the world champion robot is named Zeus, while in Rocky the champion is named Apollo Creed. In Greek mythology, Apollo is the son of Zeus, which in this wasn't made to be a Rocky film or sort of like it, but you can see that, of course, because it's robots fighting. In the most known movie for boxing is Rocky.
Alright, the next film is one that maybe some of you, unless you're a real film nerd, film buff, would have heard of. It's a little movie called North by Northwest, and if you aren't familiar with it, there's a very famous scene in which the main character is in a suit, and he's running away from a crop duster airplane, and he dives down to avoid the plane. And if you haven't seen that, you probably wouldn't know this movie. But it was directed by Alfred Hitchcock, starring Cary Grant and Ava Marie Saint. So, this one is a fairly extensive fact that I guarantee not many of you would know. While filming Vertigo, Alfred Hitchcock described some of the plot of this project to his Vertigo star, and star that you may all know, James Jimmy Stewart. So, he just naturally assumed, because he had been in a lot of Hitchcock films, that he was going to play the main role in North by Northwest. But actually, Hitchcock wanted Cary Grant to play the role. So by the time Hitchcock realized the misunderstanding, Stewart was so anxious to play the role that rejecting him would have been, Alfred Hitchcock would have felt bad. And if you know Alfred Hitchcock, that's kind of out of character because he was a very difficult director to work with. So in order to not hurt Jimmy Stewart's feelings, he delayed the project so that when he was filming that, Jimmy Stewart was filming Premiere? I don't know how to say his name. Anatomy of a Murder. So then he officially offered him the role, but Jimmy Stewart had to turn the role down because he was already busy, and that allowed Hitchcock to cast Cary Grant. That is a very Alfred Hitchcock manipulative thing to do, if you guys know anything about Alfred Hitchcock.
But I will say, I did know that one small fun fact that's actually very long.
You did know that?
I did know that.
Okay, good for you.
Because actually I just read it off my screen. This next film pretty much is The Lion King. For me, The Lion King is my favorite Disney movie.
Yeah, it's
other
an
than
epic,
if you go Disney Pixar, which then it's
an epic animated film.
The line, "What do you want me to do?" Dress in a drag and do the hula was actually improvised by Nathan Lane.
What do you want me to do? Dress and drag and do the hula? Wow! If you're hungry for a hunk of fat and juicy meat, eat my buddy Pumper here because he has a treat.
Another one of these films that you may or may not have heard of. If you're a Bill Murray fan, I strongly recommend this movie if you haven't seen it. It is What About Bob, directed by Frank Oz, starring Bill Murray and Richard Dreyfuss.
We're back to Wizard of Oz.
That's Frank Oz, which actually that'd be back to Star Wars.
Oh, true.
We're pulling it all full circle. Anyway, this is actually very interesting because two of my favorite comedy movies, well, my two favorites, are What About Bob and Mrs. Doubtfire. And the interesting fact I have about What About Bob was that the role of the protagonist, Bob Wiley, was originally supposed to go to Robin Williams.
Yeah!
But he was just barely finishing The Fisher King, and he couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Which, they're two of my favorite comedy actors, and it's just interesting to think about. I don't know if it would have worked the same. So things kind of just play out the way they're supposed to play out.
We're going into another realm of the nerds, and as I say,
realm.
We're going into Lord of the Rings, which was directed by none other than Peter Jackson. Of course, we all know the starring roles, Elijah Wood and Ian McKellen. But what we might not know is actually in the wide shots of Legolas and Aragorn and Gimli running after the orcs in the second one, all three performers are actually injured while running. Orlando Bloom had a couple of broken ribs from a fall off a horse. Viggo Mortensen had a broken toe from kicking an orc's helmet, which they actually used that sheen because they thought the cry was so believable. Brett Beatty had a knee injury, which is Gimli's stunt double.
Nobody touches a dwarf!
Peter Jackson all of a sudden said, okay, you don't have to do anymore if you don't, we can call it a day. But then they were just like, nope, we are going to troop through it. Even if I have broken ribs, toes, and in horrible pain, it makes our characters believable.
Troopers. And speaking of troopers, based on a true story, one of my favorite films, Apollo 13. Directed by Ron Howard, starring Tom Hanks, among others, Kevin Bacon, Bill Paxton, Gary Sinise. And this is actually very interesting because it's very hard when you have your own work out what to really like certain parts of it. What's your favorite thing you ever put out? It's difficult to say, but Ron Howard can definitively say this is his favorite film that he directed, which I find really, really interesting. But even more interesting is that after the premiere of the film, Ron Howard asked the audience members to write reviews of the film. He wanted to genuinely know if his most favorite film that he made actually if people actually enjoyed it. So most of the reviews were positive, but one review stated that there was no way that the crew would have actually survived the mission.
Houston, we have a problem.
Apparently this person who wrote it did not know the film was based on a true story. let's just sit on that for a moment.
So,
All right, next.
So if you didn't know it was a true story, then that's really kind of sad. People should be doing their history, but
You know what it also is? It's a testament to how effective these mission control members were, and how experienced and how trained and how brave these astronauts were. The fact that someone seeing this movie thought, look at all of the elements that had to go right in order for these guys to get home safely. So, you know what? Take that as a compliment.
And now going into our favorite studio, or at least one of them in my opinion, is Pixar. For me, their second film they ever made, or they ever produced, A Bug's Life, directed by John Lasseter and Andrew Stanton. This movie is starring Dave Foley and Kevin Spacey. And what's actually funny is the fun fact for this film is John Lasseter wanted Robert De Niro to actually play the role of Hopper, the antagonist. But when Robert De Niro turned it down, obviously they had to find someone else, and so Lasseter at the 68th Academy Awards found out about Kevin Spacey and walked up and approached him and said, "Hey, Kevin, we'd like you to do this movie. We have this movie called A Bug's Life," and immediately he loved it. He wanted to sign on to it right away, so what do? They get him to play Hopper. Pretty much after that, it went on to be a really good movie, and obviously made Pixar even better, which then their next movie, which is the movie that he loves.
It's not necessarily what people regard as the best, but this is my favorite childhood Pixar film, which immediately came after A Bug's Life, which is Ryan's favorite Pixar film, Toy Story 2, directed by John Lasseter once again, Ash Brana and Lee Unkrich, who also directed Toy Story 3, starring Tom Hanks and Tim Allen as usual, introducing Joan Cusack as Jessie. So it was originally, many of you may know this, it was originally a direct-to-video idea, which Pixar and everybody else is very, very glad that they didn't do that because it was such a success. It won the Golden Globe for Best Animated Picture, and it's in the company of only Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King. So that's pretty good. I'd say that's pretty good company. And this is a very, very interesting fact, is when they're driving down the Buzz Lightyear aisle, the Barbie is driving Potato Head, Ham, Rex, and Slinky down the Buzz Lightyear aisle. She says,
"And this is the Buzz Lightyear aisle. Back in 1995, short-sighted retailers did not order enough dolls to meet demand."
And what that means is, back when Toy Story was coming out, which was in 1995, the Mattel Toy Company, which is the toy company that makes Barbies, wouldn't license the use of Barbie in Toy Story. And many other toy sellers didn't think Toy Story would be a success, so they didn't order enough toys to meet the demand of all the success. So that was kind of Pixar taking a little stab at not only Mattel, but other toy companies there. So that's it for this episode. That's 5 of our favorite movies. 5, actually, probably more than 10 interesting facts for you guys.
And we made it through our first episode, so thank you for making it through with us. And we just want to tell you to please like if you liked, subscribe to our account. We'll be posting every Saturday a joint video, and then obviously we have our single videos coming out, which will be. For me, sometimes stories or just fun, interesting things that we do in LA.
I'll be posting some movie reviews. We'll be doing games. Make sure to check out our Vine account, Mike and the Intern.
We'll have that written down because sometimes it's a little hard to find us.
Yep, we'll put it in the comments. And thank you guys for watching. And
thank you guys so much.
Yep, we'll see you next time.